tonight we're going to play a pretty wide variety of pieces, all of course written for the percussion instrument family. And some of them are traditional percussion ensemble pieces, meaning we're using more of the familiar, more of the standard percussion ensemble music instruments in the percussion family. The snare drum, the bass drum, we are adding bongos to the first piece of music. And then we're going to do some non-traditional pieces where we're actually one piece calling for clapping as our percussion instrument. I'll tell you a little bit more about that as we get to it. We'll also feature some of our individual students who've been working on their own on a couple of pieces. I'll feature them as we get to it. It'll be a good variety of stuff, ending up with a West African piece that is traditional and also one that I composed myself for the show. So, without further ado, here is Fanfare. Thank you very much. That is one movement actually it's 5-movement piece of music written by William Kraft. The entire piece is called Suite for Percussion, and we're going to play 3 total movements from that piece of music. We're going to kind of intermingle them into the other pieces to break up our show a little bit. So you'll hear 2 other movements. That's why you see William Kraft's name in the program 3 times. The next piece of music we're going to do, we've actually combined 2 pieces of music into one, sort of made a medley, if you will. I decided I'm working on another show with the William Flora Dance Academy in Santa Ana. They do a big concert every spring at the end of their school year. And one of the pieces that I've been advised to work up with the group for the dance show is 2 pieces by Steve Reich. And Steve Reich, if anybody's ever heard of him, or if not, Steve Reich is a famous minimal composer. He writes several pieces that really have kind of a simple form to them. The parts themselves aren't that difficult, but what he does to manipulate the music is what makes it interesting and unique. One of the pieces of music that he's done, he has 2 people playing the same measure of music. One person speeds up gradually until they're offset by 1 note. And then he does it again. He offsets them by 1 note. And does that until he brings them back all the way around so they're back to unison again. This piece that we're going to play, first of all, clapping music, is a similar concept to that. But instead of 48th reps, or whatever note is normally in that measure. So what happens as a result is you get these polyrhythms that are created by playing the exact same rhythm, just dropping one part out one beat at a time. So you'll see the phenomenon as we do it. And again, it'll go through the entire cycle until it comes back to realigning again at the end. After that point, we'll slow it down and actually go into the second piece of music, which is called Flight of Virtuosity. That piece of music is a lot more intricate rhythmically, where we have several odd time signatures, measures of 3 and 5 and 7, and it's a very challenging piece of music, although the unique thing, as the other piece is written for using basically clapping and also using the legs and hands in different positions of the hands to get different timbres for the sound of the piece in total. And then it also gives us the opportunity to do some improvisation too among the group. So this is clapping music and Flight of Virtuosity. one of the performers is going to perform solo. The other is a quartet that's been working outside of Percussion Ensemble in a piece that they're going to do shortly. The first piece of music is going to be a marimba solo, and I'm going to let the performer announce her name and the piece that she's going to play.
Hello, my name is Maria Morris, and I'll be performing the sonatina for you today. It's by George Telford.
While they're getting set up for it, I'll explain a little bit about this movement so you can kind of listen in for some of these details. This third movement is called ostinato. Of course, a musical term, you'll kind of understand it from the repetitive nature of the piece, especially at the beginning. But what the composer was trying to do with this particular piece of music, if you listen to it, you'll hear there are aspects of a jazz drum set player in this particular movement. For a while you'll hear them, of course, two of the performers playing on snare drums with brushes, which is of course indicative of a jazz drum set player. But the other parts, both bass drum and even the tambourine to a certain extent, act sort of as the solo lines. And then we all, in the middle section of the piece, actually come together, and you'll actually hear almost drum fills, some what would normally be thought of as an improvised section of drumming that a drum set player would normally do, where you can hear the bass drum going to the snare drum, to the hi-hat, which is kind of our tambourine doubling today. But you'll hear some of the aspects. That's something to listen for in this piece of music, ostinato. stream, go ahead.
Thank you. This Mala quartet, I asked these gentlemen if they could help me out. I had this Mala quartet that my former drum instructor, Austin Rico, arranged. This piece is originally for guitar. It was arranged for band and then for Mala quartet. So I asked, this is Sereno Reyes the fourth, Cody Thorson, Marco Cortez, and I'm Adrian Nagel. This is Tico Tico Rico Style.
Something that's sort of non-traditional instruments that are mimicking the drum set, so much so that we actually are using our drum set that you'll see us see being performed later. The piece is called Trio per Uno, and the idea of it is that three performers are playing on kind of a really skeleton version of a drum set, whereas they're only playing on the snare drum, one high tom and one low tom. There's no bass drum. There's no cymbal being played as part of the piece. And the unique thing is how really tricky and intricate the rhythmic qualities are of the piece, and then how they suddenly are playing all together in unison, and then suddenly have to break apart and play their own individual parts, which fit together like pieces of a puzzle rhythmically. And they have to keep track of which count they're on, by which performer they're playing, and get it together that way. So, without further ado, here is Trio per Uno. the William Craft Suite for Percussion. This piece is probably more in the traditional vein, where it's just rhythmic, just not really trying to imitate anything. There's a lot to this movement. It's probably the most difficult of the three movements. So, with a little bit of change here, we will play Toccata on the Suite for Percussion. Actually a steel band because I was playing with a steel band at the time, and I started writing it, and it just felt more like a keyboard piece for mallet instruments, or marimba in particular. But I knew I wanted it to have sort of that calypso feel, but it kind of meandered through a few different styles. So we added the drums and percussion to this mix, and then of course we have the mallet parts, the low bass in similar to the Tico setup, but again with more of the percussion added to it. The story behind it, as I get my mallet music. Thank you. The story behind it, the Quartet for Sophie, and I was asked about it even yet tonight or today. Who's Sophie? Why is this quartet written for Sophie? Quintet written for Sophie? Well, Sophie was my dog when I was, when I was younger, up and through when I left for college. And the dog, while I was in school, I had heard that the dog had run away. And the dog was gone. It had been a couple days. They put up signs. They called around, called the shelters, and there was no sign of her. And it went on for 2 weeks until one day we pretty much gave up hope. My mother was home. I was at college. My mother was home, and she heard scratching at the door, and the dog had come back after 2 weeks. The dog was filthy, but it came back. So it sort of inspired me to write a piece of music that sort of reflected the story of her adventure for 2 weeks, like what she did. She was getting into trouble and kind of finding her way around. she was pretty old at that point, so I figured it was like her one last big adventure before she came back and just laid around the house for the rest of her days. So this is the story of the Quartet for Sophie.
Oh yeah, this one.
All right, here we go. of a conglomerate of something I wrote a while back for this ensemble a few years ago. And then also mixed with it, I was doing the medley of clapping music. So this is a medley of sort of West African influences. The first piece of music we're going to play is called Agabu. It's a very traditional West African piece of music. You'll hear in it 3 djembes, which are a very familiar, if any, West African instrument that several players play in the U.S. now. They become a very, very mainline instrument, or mainstream. Along with it, we're going to play the 2-tone bells called the Angogo bells, or not Angogo bells, the Gankogwe bells. The Gankogwe bells are a 9 bell of 2 different pitches, and all of the performers have different size Gankogwe bells. So for that reason, they're all different pitched. At a certain point at the beginning, you're going to hear where they're playing counter melodies to each other. They're playing different rhythms on their 2-tone bells, and you'll hear that coming out in the first half of the piece. Then we'll get into the heavier drumming piece, and then we'll go right into the final piece tonight, which is a piece that, again, I wrote called The Build, which is pretty obvious. You'll hear the parts building up one on top of another, on top of another, and it's going to feature a rather unusual instrument that I've brought called a hand sonic, which is an electronic hand percussion instrument. So I won't say much more than that about it. You can hear it in a second. But again, I want to thank you all for coming. Please come again soon. Tell your friends to come. And hopefully we'll see you again in the fall. Thank you. This is our West African medley.
Thank you.